All right, I will call this Project Development Subcommittee meeting to order. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
We are, Chair, and I'll go ahead and call roll.
Thank you.
Chair Curran?
Here.
Commissioner Clevin?
Here.
Commissioner Hackett-Morgan is excused. Commissioner Westfield? Here. And Commissioner Placer?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Great. We'll start with public comment. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, please come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. Do we have anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4, a presentation from our friends at Meow Wolf regarding a proposal for a potential mural project within Ward 4.
Thank you again for having us. We see so many friendly faces, so we're happy to be here. Real quickly, we are Meow Wolf, and I just want to allow my colleagues an opportunity to introduce themselves. My name's Christy. I'm the Impact Manager at Meow Wolf Las Vegas.
My name is Althea Santos. I'm the Community Engagement Intern.
And my name's Robin Slonina, and I'm the Artist Liaison.
If you aren't familiar with Meow Wolf, we are an arts company that creates immersive multimedia experiences. We have an exhibit in Area 15 called Omega Mart, as well as exhibits in Santa Fe, Denver, and most recently, Grapevine, Texas. As a B Corp, we value giving back to the communities that our exhibits are in, with an impact manager such as Christy in every location to facilitate the giving. We focus our community engagement on local nonprofit organizations and activating the local arts community by working with local artists.
And we are excited to potentially be working on this project with Randria Mandroso, who specializes in graphic mixed media art making that focus on environmental and social subjects. He received his BFA from St. John's University and an MA in Community Arts from the Maryland Institute College of Art. And just a little bit more about him, he's originally from Madagascar, and he went to school in Baltimore and has been heavily engaged with the Baltimore art scene. He's specialized in a fantastic project called Be More Birds, which he worked with all different youth groups and did murals all over the city featuring all the local birds of Baltimore. And he really honed his skills with that project, working with the community, getting a ton of engagement from the local youth. He actually went back to Baltimore this summer and just finished up a project with YouthWorks and the city. And he specialized in not only engaging the kids to say, what do you want to see painted, but he actually empowered them to go and interview the business owners and the neighbors in the neighborhood in which they painted the mural to figure out what the community wants, as well as the children. And so he's a specialist in working with the community. And yeah, his goal is to create art that's inclusive and accessible to everyone. You might recognize him from the Huntridge program that he did, the Historic West Side, where he had Historic West Side spelled out in sign language, those beautiful painted hands, you might remember him. But yeah, he uses it as educational tools to facilitate inclusive and hands-on representations, community arts workshops, art classes, and mural projects in public and private venues, and he's who we have on that to work with us.
Based on recommendations given to us by the office, we did multiple site visits and landed on the Police Memorial Parks, particularly the skate park, as a location that would be ideal for our artists to beautify and serve as a community gathering place. So that is our proposed location. Like Robin mentioned before, his work in the Historic West Side, that was a mural done recently, I think in this past year. So you all are familiar with him. Hopefully you have a lot of trust in what he will be able to do with the Police Memorial Park. So we don't have a concept for you all to take a look at today because, like Robin mentioned, so much of his work is going to be based on the community engagement. So we want to wait to present any proposed concept until he's had those conversations and we've had the input from the local community on that one. Based on our site visit, we anticipate that the full canvas available to us is 665 feet. We may scale down based on some budgeting, but that is our hope, is to utilize that full space. Do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, so our timeline is that we would like to enlist Eandri during a hole in his schedule, which is during the fall. And so we're hoping that we could even get this rolling as soon as October, and that we could have him engage with the community. The one that he just did in Baltimore was a 5-week process of conceptualizing and working with the communities. So that's pretty much a little bit smaller scale, but it does give us some sort of idea about what he can accomplish. And yeah, prepping in October, prepping the site. We are even thinking about a community paint, because the square footage that Christy spoke about is where we would focus his design, but the actual square footage of the skate park is larger, so maybe we do a base coat, like a community paint party or something like that, so we get like color everywhere, but then we focus the artistry in one particular area, several particular areas where it's gonna pop the most. The site does range, like some of it is 1 foot tall and then it grows up to 4 feet tall, so there's a big variety of spaces that we could utilize and make the whole thing look cohesive without needing detailed painting on every single square foot. And then design in October, mural painting potentially early November. We do love this because of the weather. This might be a good time for actually to be outside doing physical manual labor. We don't necessarily want to do that in the winter or the summer, so we love the fall for that. And then we might even plan an unveiling party to celebrate with the community, where we could have an event that's really geared towards youth. Is it the top one? Yeah, that's misleading. We're pushing every button here. I don't know. Oh, thank you. Whoever did that.
What we are asking today is not a consideration for your budget necessarily. We do plan on paying for the artist fees from our own budget. We would ask that the artists include any fees that are going to be paid to assistants and materials come out of that artist fee that we will negotiate with them, and we will have a separate contract for that. But we anticipate around $20,000 based on the square footage that aligns with what the city will pay per square footage and what we felt was fair to also include the facilitation that's going to be happening earlier on, as well as the actual painting and labor incurred with that. We anticipate that we would put any requests for the assistance and materials to the city for your approval as well. I think it just doesn't like.
Can someone do next slide? Thank you.
Oh, no, too far.
Yeah, so our requests, and we really are hopefully looking forward to a long relationship with the city, that this will be the first of many projects that we do together. And so we'd love to establish some sort of working methodology that kind of works for everybody. So one thing that we think works for us and hopefully for you is that we sort of facilitate finding the artists and curating the artists, and then also Christy's amazing at coordinating with the different groups, the community groups, so we can pair them with different youth groups that are going to be activating the spaces that they're actually painting, so that they feel an ownership for the project within the nearby community. So we would facilitate all of that. And then maybe, facilitate a meeting space. If it's a local youth group that you happen to have community centers nearby, things like that, like space would be great to collaborate on that. We are hoping that the city would take on prepping and priming the walls if possible. Again, we could coordinate it like a open community paint day. So maybe there's even potential for community activation during that preparation period. And then upon completion, we would love it if you would take on the anti-graffiti clear coat. As a mural painter myself, I know how expensive that is per gallon, and I also feel like your team knows how to use that material. You know, it is tricky. The way that you roll it on is not just any layman can do it. There's a technique to it, and so we feel really confident that the city would be the best people to be able to do that anti-graffiti clear coat, which is so important for the life of the mural. And then also continued maintenance, which I think is something that the city, we've heard that they want to do, that they want to be in charge of that maintenance and have that sort of, once we launch it, that it passes back into the city's hands. And then, you know, we would do joint press, joint social media, like we would launch it all together and hopefully do some sort of celebration to, to have a community party once the piece is finished.
I realize we don't have any time to yield, but if there are any questions, we're happy to answer.
Go ahead.
Maggie Plaster. I love this project. I think you've chosen a great park because we have a lot of plans for Police Memorial. We're in design phase right now, I believe. I think at first when I saw your timeline, I was worried because we take our recommendations to council in November when we actually get the funding approved, but it sounds like you're going to be contracting with the artist and paying the artist fee, so I think your timeline's feasible. And what you're asking from the city, I think that that's very reasonable, and I would love to partner with you guys. I love Meow Wolf as a partnership, so thank you.
This is Commissioner Curran. I echo those sentiments. Love the project. Think this is great. Sorry, just a couple questions. I'm not totally familiar with the park. So the canvas is in the skate park, on the back of the skate park. Did you have a photo? Maybe I missed it.
We did take some not as great photos, so I did pull this from just like a public image. This is kind of a sort of bird's eye view. So we were considering just the exterior of so you're seeing the interior of the bowl. We're looking to do the outside. We were told that there is more canvas available to us. I think just the exterior is just going to be what's in our budget.
Got it. And I feel like I'm usually here harping on this type of project is often 12 months. I love the 2-month timeline, but I can't help but wonder, like, is that enough time to do a community meeting? I don't know if you send mailers out and notify people and then sort of synthesize that feedback and then have a design, all that done in a month. I guess, do we start before October? And what does that community meeting, like, what does that look like? It's like you invite neighbors and sort of hear their wishes, wants, desires, and then sort of synthesize and come up with a design accordingly?
I think it's not as formal as like a ZAP project box where we need to get permission from the whole community, that kind of method. I think it's more an outreach opportunity model where we're going to try to get a partner like a community youth group area where we ask them to help us, like bring in the people who are actually using the skate park. So the kids, like what kind of after-school projects do you have nearby? So we would really try to target not the entire community, but the kids who use the skate park more than everybody. And so I think that simplifies things a little bit. Of course, everyone's welcome, and we definitely will try to get the word out as much as possible, but it's not like where we're asking for a big, permission, a big meeting where there's voting or anything like that. So it's a little bit more informal, and I think that makes it more feasible to do in that timeline as well.
Understood, love it. I love the idea of the community sort of prep and prime paint day. If you need help, I sit on the board of Get Outdoors Nevada that mobilizes like 100 plus sort of community volunteer event days per year, and perhaps that's something that they could facilitate with their mailing group, and I think it'd be a fun sort of community event. So,
One thing that we've been doing recently to get feedback on new park projects is a QR code on a banner at the park, and we've been getting lots of feedback that way. So we could do a QR code on the skate park, just asking, if you want to be involved in a project, give us your information. I mean, we can figure out the details, but we do have a couple of ways to get the community involved that actually use the skate park.
I like how targeted that is, because then it's the people that are there are going to see the QR code, so that's a great idea.
Commissioner Westfield, where is the park? I think he asked, but the location?
It's actually in Ward 4, which is not our ward, but it was one of the locations that worked best for us. Oh, gosh.
Like Cheyenne?
Cheyenne, yes, thank you.
Cheyenne east of the 215, maybe around Grand Canyon.
Commissioner Clevin, I really love this idea. I think it's a good partnership. I think it makes a lot of sense to have a private entity like Meow Wolf come in with the public, the city of Las Vegas, to do something really impactful that's going to affect the community, not just the people inside the skate park, but people outside of it. My only question is making sure that the artist is working with the city team if this becomes an acquisition of the city, that there is proper contracting and copyright information that's conveyed to them.
We've been working with you to figure out what points you need in our contract, because I believe we are going to contract with the artist, but we understand that if it needs to be painted over, if it, all of those points that we've been making in emails back and forth, we'll be sure to incorporate that, and we can share the contractual process with you as well.
Commissioner Westfield again. Did you say you needed a meeting space for some of the activities that you're going to have?
We were hoping the city would be able to donate a space for the community meetings. I mean, even if we were to use the park itself, that'd be fine. But I think we, probably want to lure some people with some snacks, and it might be nice to just have a formal space to do that in. But something like one of the rec centers, a library room, anything along those lines is what we're looking for.
So Ward 4, we've got Cimarron Rose, but I think better would be Durango Hills YMCA, which is a city facility run by the Y. I'm sure we can get a room there.
And I'd be willing to donate some snacks since making the Art Commission more user-friendly. I would put my name down for snacks, donating snacks.
We got labor and snacks already.
No, this is all on record, right?
Yeah, I'm on record, yeah. I might not be there, depending on the day, but I'll make sure the snacks are there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for your contributions to the arts in our community. We really appreciate the generous offer here, so thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
Can you let us know what you need, and maybe a list of some of the items, because it looks like this list that you have is about to get started pretty quickly, so that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to item number 5, a report by Cultural Affairs staff regarding upcoming capital improvement projects.
This is Mary Sabo. If you look in your binders, and it should come up in a PowerPoint presentation. Can you grab that? We have a list here for you all. This was provided by the Department of Public Works. So these are all upcoming capital improvement projects that are currently in the design stage. And if you note on this list, these projects with a star indicate projects that have public art elements already planned or in progress, and the other notation indicates project sites with existing public art elements. We'd had a Commissioner Eric Roberts had asked that we take into consideration capital improvement projects when planning out public art elements, and so we were able to get this list so that you can kind of see some of the things that are in the works at the moment. And we do have a representative from Public Works here if anyone has any questions about any of these specific items.
This is Maggie Plaster. I do have one question for Rosa. And that is, do we ever incorporate public art into CIP projects that are funded through the CIP and not through Percent for the Arts? Can you recall any examples?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Rosa Cortez, City Engineer, Deputy Director of Public Works, for the record. Maggie, I don't recall any projects that were funded, that were not funded through the Cultural Affairs Office.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been doing projects with your team since about 2007 when we first did the inlay stars on Casino south of Charleston. That was like the first time I worked with the Cultural Affairs team.
Because it occurred to me, we had a meeting, and I was only there briefly, about the Arts District garage. And obviously that's going to need some kind of treatment because it's an arts district. And I hope that at some point at the city manager's office, whoever decides, will start allocating some of the project funding to art where it doesn't always have to be Percent for the Arts, because our allocation's not enough to really make a huge difference for all the projects that come online.
I
Just
agree.
a comment.
You know, now that you mentioned that, I think about the Health and Wellness Center at Maine, and we're working with your team for a mural, I believe, for that wall that's facing west along Maine, actually along Maine. And I believe the project may be funding that.
Okay.
So,
This is Mary Sabo. That is correct. That is being worked into the part of the overall Public Works project budget, that mural.
so I think that might be the only one that I can actually think of, and that's this year, so.
Is that CDBG funded?
It was not. It was American Rescue Plan funds, but we also had some general funds in the project that I think is going to cover the mural.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Clevin. I have a question. For capital improvement projects, for something like what Maggie just mentioned, the Arts District garage, why isn't there a thought of adding in public art into the capital improvement project budget? Is it always just thought of to come and pull from the public art fund?
I don't have the history of how that was initiated or who made those decisions in the past. I just know that from my experience here at the city, most of the projects I've done have been separated through Cultural Affairs Office, other than the example I just gave about Health and Wellness Maine. But it's a good question, and something I think we can have a conversation with our leadership team.
Just to interject briefly, this is Laura Machado. There have been separate projects, and I think they're usually one-off. So like East Las Vegas Community Center, that came out of the renovation budget. When the courthouse was built, there was also money that was set aside, $500,000 for artwork in that facility. But I don't believe that the conversation started it was after it had already gone through quite a few different phases of capital improvement, and it's not consistent. So that's probably why it's usually after the fact.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
This is Commissioner Clevin. When the projects are being developed, is there a thought that this wall could be used for a mural, or this piece of land could be used for a three-dimensional sculpture? Is that not thought about at all? It's first approved as a project, and then if any public art is going to be added in, it comes to this body to figure out what goes there.
I believe it's both scenarios. Yeah, the city has this process where there's capital projects that are proposed for the fiscal year, and when we start scoping and bring the different stakeholders into the room, that conversation is had if it's an opportunity for the project. But then, I don't want to speak out of line for Cultural Affairs, but I think they're always looking at areas around the city to incorporate art separate from a capital improvement project.
Rebecca Holden, if I may, just props to Rosa and the public art team, or sorry, the public works team for, we talked about the medical district project that the commission allocated funding towards last year. Prior to that funding allocation, we were brought to the table very early on for discussions about various locations, and the thought from the very beginning was this is a space that's perfect for public art, so how do we get that done? So it does happen, and we're excited. It's a long process at times, but it is possible, and it's having the thought and the conversations early on that really do make a difference in facilitating the success of it all. So.
I wanted to echo that because I recently saw Here's Park. There were 4 concepts for that one, and I don't know if all of them included a public art component, but there was a sculpture in the first one. So the designers are thinking about it. We just now need to make the leap to say, hey, we can fund art that's not percent for the arts. It can be funded through other sources as well.
Commissioner Clevin, I also want to thank you for that. I think so often the arts are put at the very bottom and just seen as something as a luxury, but it really makes the community livable, and it makes people want to be in the community that they are or in the area that they are. So I think it should be at the beginning process of conceptualizing the project that the folks from the city Cultural Affairs Division can be there to advocate for art in those communities. So thank you for whenever you do that. Thanks.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure.
Very good. If there's no other questions or comments for Rosa, I think we can move on to item number 6. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's on to item number 6, a report by Cultural Affairs staff regarding current financial updates and the percent for the Arts Fund.
Maggie Plaster. So last year, the last 2 years, we thought we were doing well with the percent for the Arts Fund because we were inching up close to $1 million. So in fiscal year 22, we had 945,000, and then fiscal year 23, we had 976,000. And this year, we've got 1.165 million. So almost 200,000 more than last year. I'd like to think it's always going to be more than $1 million from here on out. I don't know if that's the case, but it is very promising that we're really starting to see $1 million plus for public art for a year worth of funding.
Let me tell you, as the old guy on the commission, it's not always this way. So.
As far as our history goes, the lowest year on record that I have was in fiscal year 19. We only got $21,000 for public art, so I think we're doing really well.
All right, well, let the good times roll. Thank you for that. With that, we'll move on to item number 7, a report by Cultural Affairs staff regarding current percent for the art projects.
This is Mary Sabo. So this here is a list of all of our current percent for the arts projects. You all have a copy of the staff report document as well, which details these projects and the expenses. So we're just going to go through this list. We don't have slides for each of these projects, just presenting you with this list. We're going to go through these and let you know the project status and some of the expenditures so far.
Rebecca Holden, I'll start it off with the 3rd Street East Ogden Avenue to East Fremont Street Public Art Project. That has a $200,000 budget, and our evaluation panel has reviewed and made a selection, and we're just in the negotiations phase prior to making that announcement. So we're excited to move on from the evaluation to actually getting the wheels on the ground with a project moving forward.
Mary Sabo, the 3rd Street Partnership. We have $30,000 for this project. This is the poetry on 3rd Street, and we are still considering options and feasibility for applying a concrete stain to that etched poetry. We still have yet to source a reliable material and a conservator for the task, and we've spent $13,600, not on that aspect of the project, but that's what's been spent total on that allocation.
Holly Lay. The AMP utility cabinets in the Arts District are complete, and we will be having a reception, I believe, with Mark Abelman. He just agreed to donate his space again for a reception, so I'll give you guys more info once we solidify dates. And for that, we had 42,000. I believe we are done with AMP for the time being, and we'll be focusing on the collection and getting everything maintained and kind of playing catch up with that.
Mary Sabo, the Casino Center Pocket Park Sculpture project is in progress. We are now in the artistic services contracting phase with an artist that's been selected by the evaluation panel. That contract is currently under review, so we hope to have more information for you soon to share about this exciting project.
Laura Machado, we're also working on the Civic Center Plaza Public Art Project. We are currently in the request for proposals phase, so it's step 2. And we have reached out to 7 artists to create new design proposals. They have been given 90 days to create something, and we'll have that proposals reviewed in October.
Rebecca Holden, for conservation and maintenance for the entire collection overall, of that $70,000 budget, we went over by just under $3,000, but that's actually a really good sign because that shows that we have used every cent and more, and we can always use more to maintain and care for the collection, which I'll get into more data about that on our next agenda item. But we are continuing, yes, to maintain and conserve the collection. And then moving on down to that next line item, that's the reservation that Public Works had allocated for us of $50,000 for ongoing care of the items that were maybe originally commissioned or created as artistic enhancements or aesthetic enhancements within the public space that we've since taken into our collection through the public art program. And the stipulation with that was that they needed to give us funding to take care of them. So we are reserved with expending those funds, and we luckily haven't had too many more projects come through that route, so we still have a remaining amount.
And Luis Varela Rico has repaired radial symmetry. That completed in June. We only spent $5,000 of the $50,000 that was allocated because we received an insurance reimbursement. So that was great.
This is Holly Lay. The Southern Nevada Law Enforcement Memorial, we have allocated $50,000. We have spent $978.80 to repair the slate that had fallen off for the sculpture on the base. I'm currently talking to several conservators and trying to finalize an exact price and what all will be done to restore the sculpture.
This is Mary Sabo. The East Las Vegas banner project is complete. It's just been a matter of coordinating with traffic control on replacing damaged banners from the wind, banners that have fallen down. And from that project, we only spent $19,723 of the Arts Commission funding. We were mostly able to fund this project through the CIP funding that was available.
We are still working with Denise DeWart on the installation that is set to go in the street improvement project on Las Vegas Boulevard, Stewart to Washington. Currently, we have paid the deposit payment of $10,000. The street improvement project is currently on hold, so we can't move forward until they move forward on their street improvement project. Once we do, we'll continue to work with Public Works to finalize the designs and then find a fabricator to install. As well as the next item, James Gay Park. We allocated $275,000. This park project is currently on hold. So the public art project is on hold as well.
Rebecca Holden, for the Medical District Public Art Project, I'm excited to announce some major progress where we've taken that Percent for the Arts funding in combination with Ward 1 Capital Improvement Project funds to identify 5 project locations. So that includes the Wellness Way project we previously reported on, but 4 additional project sites that we are launching. So I'm excited to give more information at the next full meeting of the Arts Commission for those project breakdowns. But no funds have been expended to date from the Percent for the Arts Fund.
The Municipal Courthouse Public Art Project in the entryway by Domsky Glass was completed. We're really happy about that. So $80,000 that was allocated from the Percent for the Arts account has been spent.
And Rebecca Holden, the final one on this list here is the Public Art Master Plan, and that is in progress. We just completed the community engagement portion at the end of July, and so the Art Builds community team is now compiling that data, and the next time they'll bring information to the Arts Commission will be at the October meeting.
This concludes our updates for the current Percent for the Arts projects. And like Rebecca mentioned, at our next meeting, we will have a very nice, long staff report presentation for you all to give updates on all of our projects. But this is the overview of what's happening with the Percent for the Arts projects. Anybody have any questions regarding any of these projects?
I only have one, Maggie Plaster. I feel like with Art Builds Community, they've done an awful lot of work for $11,700. Just slow on invoicing.
Rebecca Holden, I would agree that they've done so much work. There is a slight snag in the speed at which payments are able to go out because the way the purchase order is broken down in the light items versus how it's being receipted. However, that is actually the amount that they've invoiced us to date, so shocking, yes.
Okay.
But really excited for the next steps. Yeah.
This is Commissioner Clevin. So for any other projects that are completed that have remaining balance, how does that work? Because those were allocated in previous fiscal years. Is there a rollover?
If it, this is Laura Machado, if it's attached to a standard purchase requisition, we would release that requisition and the funds would be distributed into the Percent for the Arts account. But for some of these, they don't have a PO attached. Say like for 3rd Street, we may decide that we don't want to do a stain application in the concrete, which it looks like that might be the route that we go. So that would be an additional $13,000 that would be available to reallocate. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for the updates. Exciting to see some progress. Sorry I wasn't able to make it to the municipal courthouse dedication, but I did visit. It looks great. I think it's a really impressive welcoming to the beautiful courthouse. So thank you all for all that you do. Now, what the most exciting item number 8, not to discredit the previous items, there's been a lot of excitement on this agenda. But now discussion for possible action regarding new projects to be reviewed by the Project Development Subcommittee for recommendation to the Arts Commission at the September 21st, 2023 meeting.
Okay, now's the fun part. So here you'll see a list of the projects that we are going to present to you today. We're going to go through each of these projects and we're going to provide a little bit of background information, budget information, location information. We're going to go through all of these projects, and then once we go through each project, we'll go back to each one for further discussion. So we're going to start off with the West Side Education and Training Center mural and sculpture. So this project proposed by Public Works in the city of Las Vegas. So this facility is a forthcoming facility this was actually on that list for item number 5 of upcoming CIP projects that are in the design phase. So this is going to be a facility near Washington Avenue and D Street in the historic West Side that will be intended to help unemployed and underemployed residents with training and job placement opportunities. And the design team has identified locations for an exterior mural and an exterior sculpture, and these are just renderings from the design team. And you can see the budget information here. The budget ask is $275.
This is Laura Machado. The next project that we're bringing to your attention is the Civic Center Plaza. It's an opportunity for a second sculpture to go in the plaza area. So the project development team identified this location. They've actually identified a few locations in the Civic Center Plaza, and this is just the second location for a potential three-dimensional art installation. As you can see on the right side, the highlighted red area indicates the location and the size available for the installation. It's also near the entrance of the new gallery space that's going to be in the Civic Center building. So we're bringing this as an opportunity for you to fund this project at $220,000. We're also working on artwork for the interior space of the new Civic Center building. There are 2 separate buildings. They're listed in the graphic here as Phase 2. The design project development team has identified quite a few areas within the building on the first floor and the second floor where we could install 2-dimensional work on open wall spaces. Also an open area in a lobby where we could potentially do a suspended art installation. And then on the second floor, there's a lot of space where we could permanently install sculptural work or have a rotating gallery where it would be 3-dimensional work. So there's a lot of opportunity in this new beautiful building to bring in artwork, local, national, possibly internationally, artists. So $275,000 is what we've attached to this project budget.
Rebecca Holden here. Public art maintenance is the proposed project here, proposed by the Office of Culture, Department of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, City of Las Vegas, and that's the proposed allocation of funds for the maintenance and conservation of the entire collection in fiscal year 2024. That covers everything in all awards, and the proposed budget we've brought to you is the same amount as last year, although you will note, as previously provided, we did exceed that allocation in fiscal year 2023. But separate from this, we're working on a larger project of cataloging our records and making our records available to the public, and that's given us some really wonderful data that I'm happy to share with you as it relates to this collection. But first I'll talk about the maintenance expenses there on the left-hand side with the gold chart there. So let's see here, 80% of that $72,000 that we wound up spending was on professional services, and so that included consultants, specialized labor and art handling. It included things like the Ansan Sister City Park sculpture base that we needed to have the construction work done on that. 11% was spent on supplies, and so that includes things like plaques and signage, chemicals, protective coatings, and then the proper tools and protective equipment related to those. And then the next is 9% was what we spent on artistic services. So that includes opportunities we have to hire the original artist to complete repairs to the artworks, et cetera. And then on the right-hand side there, you'll see the blue breakdown of the overview of the entire collection. So we have just over 14,000 objects that are in our collection, and that is in total valued at a little over $3 million. And so that breaks down to our largest chunk of works in the collection is 786 portable permanent collection objects. So that includes 151 reproductions of historic photographs, such as those acquired from the News Bureau, and our collection of photos of city officials located outside of chambers. 337 of those are painted storm drains and utility cabinets. So the majority of that is utility cabinets and then just a few storm drains. And then 126 of our items are publicly sited objects, so sculptures in the right-of-way, et cetera. And then we have 55 murals, both indoor and outdoor. And then 167 miscellaneous items, which includes a little less traditional art items, so things like vinyl banners, metal banners, and then also some concrete pedestals. And so assets that are still have a fiscal amount attached to them and a value that we still are responsible for, but they don't necessarily qualify as artworks per se in the way that we might think about them. So the ask this year is $70,000 to take care of all of that. And we'll move on to the next slide. Thank you. And then in addition to that, paintbrush gateway maintenance is another proposed project proposed by the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs with the City of Las Vegas. And so this is a proposed allocation of funds to secure lighting design services for the maintenance and conservation of these artworks. And so if you're not familiar with them, they are located at South Casino Center Boulevard and also at South 4th Street, both along East Charleston Boulevard, just right down here in the Arts District. And that proposed budget is $110,000. And so a little backstory on that. In December of 2022, we did bring a lengthy report to the Arts Commission pertaining to the condition of the paintbrush gateway sculptures by Dennis Oppenheim, and also our intent to work with the estate of Dennis Oppenheim and their recommended lighting designer in 2023 in order to achieve solutions for maintenance, repair, and conservation. So this proposed allocation of funding will allow for an assessment and incremental steps to improve the condition of the artwork, working in tandem with the artist estate and their lighting designer.
This is Holly Lay. We just witnessed the presentation from Meow Wolf. Seems like everyone's pretty excited about partnering up with them. We have allocated $500 for the coating and possibly primer. When we talked, it was a small amount of space, the 665, maybe smaller square footage. So that's not a lot of space, and it depends on the design, but 500 should cover everything on our end.
Mary Sabo. The next project we're presenting to you today is the Dock Romeo Skate Park Mural Project. So this is another skate park mural project. This was proposed by a community member, local artist, stakeholder, and skateboarder and stakeholder. Business owner Nico Rusin is proposing an exterior mural at the Dock Romeo Skate Park. As a local skater and patron of this park, he would like to work with the community members to create a large scale mural in the full bowl featured here. And then the materials that he's been researching have been heavily researched so that they're most scratch and slip resistant. And the ask for this project is $49,500.
This is Holly Lay. For this project, we have been working with the Eastside NERSA project, and they asked us to find a prominent artist from the East Side, and the name that was brought up was Justin Favela from several people in the NERSA project in the community, and they really wanted us to approach Justin because we do not have a piece of his in the permanent collection, and he is from the East Side, from the NERSA area, and his business is in the East Side area as well. So we would like to invite him to create a proposal to create a sculpture at this pork chop on Sunrise in North 26th Street, and we have allocated $275,000 for fabrication of this substantial sculpture.
This is Mary Sabo. That concludes our list. So I am going to kind of skip back here and get back to this main listing. If you look in your binders, I've provided some backup material that is a page. It should be right behind your presentation documents. So that's this list again with the description and the proposed budget. So if you would like, we can go down this list and talk about each of these projects individually, starting with the West Side Education and Training Center mural and sculpture.
Maggie Plaster. So by my calculation, the amount of all these projects is $109,900 over. So we've got more than we have the funding for. And I know Mary wants to talk about them one by one, but just looking at all of these, I really want to advocate hardcore for paintbrush gateway maintenance. It's been, I mean, it needs to be addressed, and we need to start now. It's going to take years to get it back, or to maybe even better than what it ever was, since we've got better technology now. I think that we could lessen the amount for the Civic Center interior art. That's one of those projects that I wish that we had the budget in the CIP for, because in this building, there was budget for the art. And I hope, you know, and we can also look at it incrementally, like we can buy art over some years to fill the building. It doesn't have to be, and I don't think that 275 would even fill the building, but I'm just trying to find a way to lessen this amount by 109. So those are my two thoughts about the list of projects.
This is Commissioner Curran. I wanted to talk about those beloved paintbrushes as well. I was reminded I've been up here for 8 years. The paintbrushes have been a topic of conversation almost every year for 8 years. I seem to remember having spent a ton of money on them previously. I seem to remember dialogue where they're not particularly beloved in the community, and you know, like $110,000 is no small investment. I guess I'm just curious to know, like, how much have we spent to date maintaining them? It seems they've always got problems, and I just wonder if they should even. It looks like you've got an answer for me.
Commissioner Kern, I'll do my best to answer. I don't have that number right off the top of my head, but the expenses you're referring to for maintaining the brushes previously came through an agreement we had with Young Electric Sign Company for a routine, essentially drive-by and change out of any of the lamps that they were able to change out. And that was a multi-year agreement, and I think in total, over the multiple years, I think it was somewhere around $30,000, but I don't want to misquote that. But all that to say is that was a great solution during the time that the equipment could be cared for in that way. And so it's just in the interim between those services no longer being a practical approach, and now that's where we just see the increased deterioration over time with the degradation of materials.
I guess I open it up to my fellow committee members to weigh in. I don't have a strong opinion about the paintbrushes. I know I've heard a lot over the years, again, that they're not particularly loved. So I wonder if, do we even consider $100,000 for something new, which would be impactful? And I don't know. That's a big number to maintain some historically problematic pieces.
This is Commissioner Clevin. I have understood this project over the years, and I've heard from community members their feelings on the project. That being said, it's already acquired by the city. So now that it's in the city's possession, you must be good stewards. We must be good stewards of this. If we put this off and delay, you lose credibility with the fine art community across the world. This is a Dennis Oppenheim piece, and it's up to us to make sure that it's maintained.
But what's the cost going to be maintaining it moving forward? Could you do something else? I mean, some stuff, it's hot here. Did they think it through of what they put out there that, you know, can the heat will that continue to deteriorate things? Because looking at the pictures, it looks like it's falling apart in a few areas, and then when someone graffitis it, you got to get that off, and parts are missing.
This is Commissioner Clevin. I think once they get it up to what it's supposed to look like, there needs to be discussion with the contractor, the vendor that has been suggested by the Oppenheim Estate for what an annual maintenance would look like. We can't prevent graffiti. Graffiti happens on our pieces that only cost us $5,000. So it's likely going to happen to the piece that costs more.
It's not the graffiti, just that. It just looks like it's falling apart in other areas as well. So, and how expensive is it going to be? Is it going to be like $100,000 ongoing, or what? I mean, that's something you should look at. It needs to be practical for where they get installed. It maybe they didn't think it through.
I think technology's come a long way since we installed them. I think we can do LEDs now. That would be a lot more efficient, use less power. There's 2 paintbrushes. One's in a great location. The other one is not at all. We could just focus on the one paintbrush that's actually in the Arts District and use it as a test case and see if we can get that one up to what our standards are, and then look at either moving the other one or taking it down. The thing is, if we decommission these pieces, taking out the factor that Dennis Oppenheim is the most well-known artist of any piece in our collection, taking it down costs a lot of money too. So it's going to cost a lot of money no matter what we do, and I think that we'll maintain some credibility if we actually put some money towards it and fix it.
Commissioner Curran, do we think the more prominent one of the two, do we think it's about $55,000 to do a sort of test run on that? Can we start there? One that's just more higher visibility?
I think the quote that we initially got for the whole shebang, restoring them and moving one to be across the street from the good one, was like over 500,000. So I don't know what we can get with 55. I don't know.
But the 110 is to sort of refresh both of them, right, in their current position?
I think that's up for us to decide. I was kind of hoping on putting all of that funding towards one of them, the one that gets the most, that's actually in the Arts District.
Can I just interject for
Please.
1 minute? This is Laura Machado. So we had allocated $50,000 to repair radial symmetry. We have $45,000 unused because we collected an insurance reimbursement. So that's $45,000 of savings. And so if you're saying $55,000 for allocating it towards this, and we could supplement with the $45,000 that we saved for radial to go into at least gathering, a quote on what it will take to make this prominent a paintbrush workable and feasible. And then we can also talk to YESCO, because our traffic enforcement or traffic TIFO department has a contract with YESCO every month to maintain all of the neon signs along Las Vegas Boulevard. We can use that information to give you a base on what it would cost to maintain it monthly, so that when we go into the next meeting, we'll have more substantial numbers. Just throwing that out there.
That would be my preference. It's great if we can use the $45,000 from radial symmetry, but I would rather prioritize and focus on the more high traffic, high profile. Get that one done right and see how that goes before spending additional money on the other one. So is the $110,000 just a estimate? I mean, was there anything behind that number, or?
Rebecca Holden, I'll give some context for that amount. That amount ultimately was generated with consideration to the asks that are being brought to you today overall and the limitations of the fund that we're pulling for. But prior to our discussion with the estate in December of 2022, we had Based on our quotes received from YESCO for restoration and quotes on past received, we had for several years gone through the capital improvements projects request funding process for, I think, about $500,000, and that was, I think, 3 times that was denied. And then we also approached the Bank of America Conservation Grant Program for fine art, and that also, I think, once or twice, and that was declined. And then we also submitted a grant application for American Rescue Plan funding in a similar amount, and that was also declined. And so, in those conversations with the artist estate, in giving them that information as background, and the subsequent conversations with their lighting designer, it was determined that there were steps that we could make incrementally that would make the overall ask and need for these a lot more bearable, I think, overall, in looking at the context of the program and our expenses. So the idea is not this approach where we come in and we ask for the most funding possible to do everything. We want just enough money to work with them and show them that we're committed to making this start, which I think is, I'm paraphrasing what I think Maggie said earlier as well. So this is the least amount we've ever asked for the paintbrushes, and we know it won't get us everything, but we know it's an excellent good faith step in the right direction, and timed perfectly to be working in conjunction with the artist estate.
Commissioner Westfield, if we can't get the money for it, I mean, even though it's prominent, what are we going to do if we keep getting turned down, and how do you upkeep it?
Commissioner Clevin with this $110,000
But
that's coming out of ours.
But that's just a number that may not even do it. They don't even know. I'm just saying, what happens if you can't get enough money to fix it so that it works properly and it's continued to be maintained?
I guess ultimately at the end you de-accession it, and again, de-accession looks very bad on the city. It'll look
That's
very
great, but you
bad.
still need money. I mean, it looks bad, but where's the money coming from if everybody's turning it down for optimal care, for taking care of all of them?
Maggie Plaster. Well, this is why I asked Rosa the question earlier, because the city has a lot of funding and a lot, they do. It's not just percent for the arts. So I feel like we keep asking for funding from different sources, but we're not putting our own funding towards the paintbrushes. So I think that if we could put an investment, see what it gets us, we might be able to show that to the city manager's office and get some CIP funding to finish the job. It's possible.
Thank you for that sort of history of, because I know there had been a lot of discussion about it every year, and I couldn't remember what had been voted to approve or not approve, but I knew at least there had been a lot of discussion, and I guess I assumed that meant there was a lot of money spent on it, but that is helpful. I guess a question I have, I know YESCO's always maintained it. I've done projects with YESCO. I hold them in a really high regard. They've got a stellar reputation in town, but with that reputation often comes probably the highest pricing in town too. So I guess I just can't help but wonder if we're open to speaking with other vendors, other reputable vendors, and see if we can find a most cost-effective path forward.
Yeah, Rebecca Holden, we have received 3 quotes for those previous funding requests. So we received a quote from Hartlauer, Federal Heath, and YESCO. And so I believe one of those companies is no longer in business. But that's what we've done in the past. And so this is hopefully working with the estate's recommended lighting designer. They'll give us some different options. And so, yeah, knowing YESCO is the priciest one out there based on our quotes we've received in the past, we're excited about the prospect of getting some more vendors to come forward with a little bit more of an understanding of the art side of things as well. So,
this is Commissioner Clevin. I kind of want to move away from this. I have a question with this $110,000 overage. It looks like we're under in the previous fiscal year by like $78,000. So can we make it up through there and then request CIP funds to cover the rest?
We could definitely use funding that we've saved from a previous year towards whatever we want to do for next year. CIP funding requires approval by the city manager's office and then the city council, and I don't think we should plan on any of that. Plus, we're not quite in the right cycle for that.
Commissioner Clevin, are there any projects on here that you think could be reduced by $30,000? And what would you recommend those to be?
This is Laura Machado. I would say both of the Civic Plaza projects. We've already allocated $1 million to the central installation in the center of the plaza. So I agree with Maggie. The interior budget could come down. Also, you know, the second location could happen next fiscal year. So those are my suggestions.
Are you able to show on the site plan where the $1 million piece goes in relation to the proposed $200,000 piece?
Oh, well, on the map, I wish I had a little arrow. There is, in the plaza area, there's a walkway that goes through the center.
Yeah.
You see that? It will be right as a central focal point. Oh,
Wow, look at
perfect. Right there. So
And
this, the state,
Street will be pedestrianized permanently? Is that the plan? Those solar panels were in front of City Hall, right? Am I oriented correctly?
right, and those are food trucks that are stationed right there when we hold all of our mini events every weekend in the plaza.
I know fiscal responsibility is not exactly trending in governance these days, but I think we can easily shave off $109,000. And to Maggie's point earlier, $275,000 isn't going to line all the walls in the Civic Center building, and it doesn't have to happen in the first year. I think $200,000 would be an impactful starting place for that. And you know, for a secondary sculpture in the park, you know, if we were to shave 20 off of that, I still think a $200,000 secondary sculpture is impactful, and that gets us most of the way towards that $109,000 overage.
Kim, before our next meeting, would we know what fund balance we have in percent for the arts that we can add to our 1.165 million budget?
Yes, I actually, I've requested the information, so I might already have it. So we'll have it by the next meeting.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Clevin. I'm in favor of us using as much of the money as possible in the budget. We really have to make sure that City Council understands that art is essential. This is not an option. This is a mandatory. This is Commissioner Clevin. Do you guys have ideas for what you want to see as a second sculpture or the types of artwork you want in the Civic Center building? How do you guys think about the scope of these projects according to the amount that you're proposing?
This is Maggie Plaster. We've had some criticism towards our public art program that we haven't had enough like blue chip artists. So we've toyed with the idea of hiring someone to help us source the art piece for the plaza. And we haven't done that before that I'm aware of, and so we would be trying something new, but we wouldn't go through our normal RFQ, RFP. We would find someone well-known. Yep. And for the internal, I will leave that to staff to talk about how they would do that.
For me, this is Laura Machado, I'm thinking about different ways that we can go about sourcing work, and I definitely want to connect with local artists, but have it connected to the space. And so coming up with a thoughtful approach on requesting proposals and having people apply, but then also really wanting to work with galleries. So kind of having more of a holistic idea, and then reaching out to people, because we post solicitations, requests for qualifications for the most part, but a lot of people don't necessarily apply for them. And so going to individuals, talking about the project, inviting them to respond, it's kind of what I'm thinking, because I'm really hoping that for the interior space, it's connected to the design of the building, which is what we did for City Hall. Worked with artists directly on coming up with work that was reflective of what the architect had envisioned for the space. So something similar, but also working with galleries.
And this Commissioner Kern, one more question. That 109,000 over does not factor in the 45,000 back from radial symmetry. Is that correct? Maybe.
Correct.
So from where I sit, we should just try to find a way to shave 64,000 and then we're within budget.
We came in short on other projects as well. We came in short on other projects as well.
I think it's worth, you don't have to fill out the entirety, 100% of the budget. We saw last year that we went over in maintenance, for instance. It's nice to have cushion and, you don't have to spend every dollar allocated, and it just rolls over to the following year as well.
I agree with the comment that we should have a cushion.
I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in on the thought of shaving 75,000 off of the Civic Center proposed allocation for interior artwork, and shaving 20,000 off of the funding for the secondary sculpture, and that gives us cushion and goes a long way to those sort of proposed projects.
This is Maggie Plaster. I liked what you said earlier about factoring in the 45. So whatever that leaves us, I think it's 64, because we will still have some balance in percent for the arts. I would propose just shaving off the interior artwork and leaving the second sculpture at 220.
Does 200 seem like a fair number?
Well, when we initially talked to the person we were thinking about hiring, the number was a lot larger. So I'm worried about blue chip art for that amount.
Can you wait to the following year to put the interior art? And roll some of this money over to the next year and add to whatever you're going to get with the new fiscal year? And go after someone with a bigger name?
Well, I think that's the thought is, again, we're not going to fill every wall in that center in year one.
The other thing we haven't mentioned is that the fiscal year ends June 30th, but this building's not going to be open until December. So it's of 2024. So we have time.
But it's not like the percent for the art, like the project is the project. It's not like we're getting the same money next year necessarily. This is a major capital improvement project. We won't have that level of spending presumably the following year.
Commissioner Clevin, so Maggie, what you're saying is potentially if you leave the 200,000 for the second sculpture, you may be able to retain this consultant who could propose certain pieces, some of which could be purchased immediately, some may be delayed until the following fiscal year.
I think the consultant would just be picking one piece.
Okay.
And I worry that we would just hold on to this funding until we can get another tranche next year before the person will work with us. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's a possibility. I would just propose cutting from the 275 because we can acquire the art, we can store it, but it won't go in the building until the next fiscal year.
Could we combine those two and just call it Civic Center Arts? And then make both of those rows 400,000 or 420,000. That way you have more flexibility.
I'm okay with that.
So shave 95,000 off the combined two.
Correct.
And, sorry. So the proposal would be to shave 95,000 off the combined and reallocate at a future date? but, you know, 400,000 between the sculpture and the interior artwork?
We would just say that the whole amount is for Civic Center, Plaza, and building, and then we would give staff flexibility in deciding how it's spent. But it would definitely be for Civic Plaza.
What type of piece are you looking for the interior?
There are multiple locations in the interior for the pieces. The entryway, I'm not sure if we're talking about hanging something from the ceiling. Definitely 3-dimensional and 2-dimensional works.
Do we think we need to raise our maintenance budget since we went over last year and things tend to only get more expensive over time?
Rebecca Holden, that's a great idea, Chair Curran. I would, that sounds great. Good idea.
Why don't we call it 80,000? That's not going to move the needle too much on maintenance. I mean, and with the 95 we saved from the proposed on the Civic Plaza combination, minus the 45,000 coming back from the insurance claim, I think we're a balanced budget.
So my proposal is that staff looks at what our fund balance is, what do we have in the percent for the arts that is not allocated right now, leaves a cushion, maybe 50 to 100,000. We don't really know until we see those numbers. And then when we come back in September, we combine what we were allocated for this year, the 1.165 million, we add in whatever we have unallocated outside of the cushion, and then rework these numbers based on the comments that you've had today, and we'll present that in September to the full commission.
That sounds good to me, Commissioner Curran. I don't know if we need other thoughts or if we need a formal motion or if that will do. I think that's a motion.
I second it.
Before we take a vote, I want to make sure that all the commissioners understand what that motion is, and that the clerk understands it, and that the staff understand it. If there's anybody who doesn't understand it, please speak now or forever.
I'll restate. I'm making a motion that we check with finance to find out how much percent for the arts we currently have unallocated. We leave $50,000 as a cushion, and we add the rest of it to the 1.165 million and bring that amount to the next commission meeting.
I'll second. Everybody, is that clear, clerk and city attorney? Does that all make sense and kosher? And we should have more clarity in our September meeting when, again, this is just a record. Yeah, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks.
Exciting stuff. With that, we'll move to item number 9, citizens' participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. No subject may be acted upon by the committee unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. Seeing none here for citizens' participation, we will adjourn. Thank you.